big hello to everyone, everyone on all the platforms. We have Facebook, we have YouTube, Periscope, WCNC.com. Everybody, Fred Shropshire here with WCNC Charlotte, joined by Defender Michelle Bowden. Good to see you, Michelle.
I know, it's nice to be back doing this. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I'll tell you what, it's nice. It's nice to be talking about something that I feel really great about.
It's food.
It's food. I love food. And you're talking about something that has been very important and instrumental here in Charlotte, kind of defining the city's identity over the past couple of years. Charlotte has developed this reputation as a place of homegrown restaurants, and that has not been the case historically. But because of the pandemic, we've seen businesses suffer, unfortunately. And so you're talking a little bit about that tonight.
Yeah, so there's a lot sort of in there, and sort of laying the groundwork. What you started with is the idea that, Charlotte, for a lot of people when they moved here in the early days, was not known as a food scene. It was very much sort of a meat and potatoes chain kind of restaurant, sort of the bankers in Uptown. When things closed down, they went out for happy hour, and that was pretty much it. But then starting around 2008, when the DNC came, and then beyond that, we really started to get chef-driven restaurants where chefs would open their own restaurants. We saw farm to table, and we really made a name for ourselves. And some of the people we talked to in the course of this story said 2019 was like this boom year. Tons of amazing and all kinds of different restaurants in all parts of the area, not just Uptown and South End, but really throughout the region were opening. It was like this heyday. And then boom, the pandemic hits. And so I think we've all seen, the closures that have happened. And I think there's a lot of doomsday and all of that. But we also found there's some really good news when it comes to sort of the foodie scene. I know you're a foodie, I'm a foodie, and there's some good news too. So it's not all bad news. It's nice to be able to have a Defender's piece that's not all bad news.
Yeah, and one of the cool things that I've noticed personally, just from going, just from checking out things and reading reviews and things on social media, there have been a number of restaurants that have opened during this pandemic, a very challenging time to even stay in business. People getting into a very risky business, opening a restaurant is very hard. It's very challenging, and they're thriving.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you say it. I mean, even during great times, it's still very difficult and very stressful to open a restaurant. We actually have a special web extra. So you're not going to see it on TV tonight. You can only see it on WCNC.com. We talked to a popular restaurant owner here. He's got the Stanley and Elizabeth, and he's getting ready to open an Italian restaurant, Ordo, in Noda. And he talks about, they were supposed to open months ago, but all kinds of delays. First of all, he was in Italy doing research and development for his Italian restaurant just before the shutdown. So he and his fiance first had to figure out how to get home, and then all kinds of delays. You can imagine the permitting process, the construction process, and they are finally just now getting ready to open in about 2 weeks. So we've got this whole interview for him where he talks about that. And one of the surprising things, he's having trouble hiring people. Because so many people in the restaurant industry lost their jobs because of all these closures and, the way the restrictions are on restaurants. And many of them have left town. Some of them are, quite frankly, happier taking unemployment for a little bit longer as they see how that shakes out. Those are some of the problems he was telling us he's facing. But he said, once you start down this path, he was so far down, you got to stick with it. Yeah. And the other thing is these restaurateurs, they are a scrappy bunch of hustlers who will make it happen if they can. So all of that was really positive. And I see, do you want to go to some of the comments? Because someone brought up something very interesting. I hope I'm saying the name right. Truve Williams, because of the culinary school. Absolutely right. We've got some incredible talent that we didn't always have here in prior years here in Charlotte because of the culinary school, Johnson and Wales. And what's so incredible is it's chefs, it's sous chefs, it's pastry chefs, all coming out of that school and really helping to build that talent pool that are now opening these restaurants. And you probably recall one of our restaurants was just named one of the best in the country, one of the best new restaurants by Esquire magazine.
I remember.
Leah and Louise. And if I'm not mistaken, I think their pastry chef is from Johnson and Wales. So that person.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So Truve is absolutely right. We've got a great pool of talent here because of that school.
Yeah, and I think it's been pretty interesting to see also how this has impacted neighborhoods, because I know that, before the pandemic hit, restaurants were popping up all over the place. And we've also inversely seen the opposite effect in terms of some of them closing temporarily, some of them closing permanently. What's the outlook for making a recovery or for how these restaurants are coming back?
So that's the big question. We talked to a lot of different people. We got a lot of different answers depending on who we talk to. And you'll see some of that in the piece tonight. But one of the things they said is that, once this is over and we're all able to go back into restaurants and feel comfortable, we're the kind of people like we want to be in that environment. Yeah, it's great that we can all get takeout. I know you and I are taking advantage of takeout, but we want that environment. We want date night where we're sitting there with other people and we can get a drink at the bar. And so they do think that once vaccines really ramp up and we're sort of on the other side, that Charlotte is in a great position to have restaurants thrive again, but some neighborhoods are going to be slower to respond to others. You might be surprised they're concerned about Uptown. There's amazing restaurants in Uptown. Several have closed, some are hanging on, a lot are still doing really well. I've done a lot of interviews with people that are doing really well. The challenge, if you sort of connect the dots, all the office towers are empty and will probably remain empty for a little bit longer. We don't know. That's the challenge. And so they say Uptown may be one of the neighborhoods that's a little bit slower to recover. But I just interviewed, not in this piece, for another story we're working on, the owner of Haymaker, which is also an upscale sort of farm-to-table restaurant.
Love that restaurant.
Oh my God, great vibe, date night and everything. He says they're doing really, really well on the weekends. They're still sort of packing it in as much as you can pack it in at 50% capacity. And they're doing really well, but they used to be 7 days a week. Now they're 5 days a week. And he said a lot of it is because our customers aren't here right now. And so they're hoping for them to come back. So that may surprise some people to hear about Uptown.
Wow. If you're just now dipping into this live stream, we're talking to our defender, Michelle Bowden, who has a story this evening in our 11 o'clock newscast, where she's talking about the restaurant scene in Charlotte and our surrounding area and our different neighborhoods and how the pandemic has affected the restaurateurs in our city and what the impact has been. I know, Michelle, that there are a lot of restaurants, like you said, that they're surviving right now. Yeah. What kind of help is out there? We hear about business help and obviously personal help with just citizens who are seeking unemployment. But as far as owning a restaurant, if you are in business as a restaurateur, what kind of help is out there for those folks?
So there's a couple different things, and there's a real need right now, honestly, for more help, and there's a push to get them more help right now. PPP, of course, the first round of PPP was supposed to go to small businesses, and in some cases, some of the bigger businesses sort of gobbled up the money, and not everyone had their fair share. So some of the restaurants got money, but we did talk to one business owner for another story that we're working on. He didn't get PPP and he had to close one of his restaurants, Ilios Noche, which was a beloved restaurant in the South Park, Quail Corners community. So he didn't get PPP for that particular restaurant. So he's hoping this second round of PPP, which is very much targeted at sort of the mom and pop, the small businesses, minority, women-owned businesses, and restaurants are really trying to get in and get a piece of that. But there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger push. You know how the airlines got a government bailout? The restaurant industry, we've been hit almost as hard as the airlines, if not as hard as the airlines. We want some sort of federal, bigger picture bailout. So there's a push for that. Not sure if that's going to be included in this package that they're working on right now in Congress or not. But a lot of the local restaurateurs are a part of that, trying to get some direct federal funds specifically targeted to restaurants, whereas the PPP, anyone can apply.
Yeah, and it's been hit very hard. I know the New York Times is actually doing these obituary sections for the restaurant industry in that city. That is how hard it hit that industry, and it's just
that's a horrible way of putting it, but it
is. I mean, but that literally is what it is. They're doing the same thing that they would do for people. They're talking about restaurants on the same level. That's how many have closed down in that city on that scale. So here in Charlotte, we're fortunate to have what we do have that's still operating, and the fact that restaurants, again, are able to open.
They've still open. Yeah.
Some have been able to open since the pandemic, and they're doing well. It's just amazing.
There's one that everyone's really excited about. It's called Supperland. It's from a husband and wife team that have several restaurants already that are very successful in Noda. It's going to be in an old church, and they're really excited about that one. That's supposed to open, I think, in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, but even they have been delayed, and their other restaurants they own have faced challenges. I mean, everyone has. One of the other things that, I hate this word, we use it all the time, the big pivot that we've seen from restaurants, they've had to do probably a bigger pivot than most. Many of them expanded patios or created patios. A lot of them did takeout really for the first time. I mean, some of these more upscale restaurants, they're not designed to put their food in a box and drive it home. You know, they're designed for the whole experience and, you know, what it looks like. Presentation, exactly. So a lot of these upscale restaurants got very creative. They made smaller menus so that they could handle it better. And I think some of those things are actually going to stick around from the experts that we talked to. We talked to one girl who's been writing. She's a food writer in Charlotte, has been for 10 years. She writes it's a subscription blog now, The Unpretentious Palate, and she talked about the fact that these patios are probably going to stick around, and the takeout is probably going to stick around, and that's okay. Yeah. It's reaching a much larger audience that way. So that may be something positive that came out of all of this as well. But there are, there's some longtime favorite restaurants that closed. Carpe Diem, that was one of the first restaurants when I moved to Charlotte 14 years ago. I mean, that was like, they were known for their fried chicken. But it was an upscale restaurant in Elizabeth, and it was just, everybody knew Carpe Diem, and they closed pretty early on in the pandemic. The plus side for them, they too pivoted. They own Earl's Grocery right near where the restaurant was. So Earl's Grocery, they expanded, they moved their fried chicken over there, but it's not really a restaurant anymore. So closed. And that was one that everybody loved. And I think there was a big surprise. Did you ever go to La Belle Helene in Uptown?
Yes, I love that place. Oh my goodness. I was so sad to hear that they closed.
Date night, and we used to go for Sunday brunch, and just, I mean, the food was spectacular. They were known for having one of the coolest bathrooms, not only in the city. I think that bathroom got attention nationwide. I think a lot of people were surprised when that closed. It was sort of an indication of this is tough.
This is serious. Yeah.
And one of the restaurants you'll see tonight, they've been closed they've been closed since summer. They were waiting for the right time to reopen, and they are just reopening later this week. I think they're going to open Thursday night. That's Five Church.
Yep, I saw the email.
Yeah, so, and they're excited about that. I mean, can you imagine? They were closed for a long time, and they're one of the restaurant groups that's hoping to take advantage, I think, of the second round of PPP.
Yeah. Well, we are hoping that everything bounces back, because we do have a wonderful restaurant scene here in Charlotte. I'm looking forward to seeing your story tonight. If you're just now joining us, or if you haven't heard, Michelle Bowden has a story tonight about Charlotte's restaurant scene and how it's been impacted and how people are rebounding during this time, during this pandemic, a tough time for a lot of businesses, specifically restaurants. That's at 11 o'clock in our 11 o'clock newscast. Michelle Bowden, one of our defenders, doing great work as always. Good to see you, Michelle.
Thank you, Fred. One of the last things I'll say is this community, it's a tight-knit community of restaurants and chefs. Sometimes it's very competitive. This group in Charlotte, they're all in it together, and it's kind of cool to see. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, Fred.
Absolutely. Watch the story again tonight in our 11 o'clock newscast. Thanks, everyone.